Good to be with you guys this morning. Pastor Greg, I'm not sure how you preach week after week. I mean, this is back to back. I don't usually do this, and we've had youth on Wednesdays and this on Sundays, and it is exhausting. Back in the day, you guys did Wednesday nights and Sunday morning. Oh my goodness. Can we give it up for Pastor Greg, who diligently prepares week after week, and he is deserving a well-needed rest right now. And so I'm excited to go back into our Nehemiah series together this morning. I am excited to preach and pull up my notes here. Here we go. All of us right now probably going through a problem in our lives, different types of problems. One problem could be very relevant to right now. Maybe we're deciding on where to eat after this today, and we disagree. Candace and I, our largest elevated discussions are usually based around what we want to eat, because neither one of us knows what we want to eat. Another problem you might be facing this morning is, I'm actually going to prohibit you from making a problem. Is next week is Mother's Day. And so this is a reminder to all husbands, fathers, and children that next week is Mother's Day. And do not forget, because that will be a problem for you. So this is your reminder. But I don't know, maybe there's different types of problems this morning. Maybe you just feel overwhelmed by life's burdens this morning. Maybe the problems in your marriage this morning. Maybe it's you don't have that spark that you used to. Maybe it's you feel like you're communicating on different wavelengths. And maybe it's you feel like you're living with a roommate potentially. Maybe this morning it's family relationships. You have estranged family relationships. Some of those relationships may seem hopeless. Maybe it's a decision that you recently made, and it wasn't a decision that you should have made, and now you're living with the aftermath of the ripple effect of what came. Maybe it's financial burdens this morning. Maybe it's unexpected debt. Maybe it's loss of income. Maybe it's the promotion that you thought you had. Maybe it's you want to develop a new routine or a spiritual discipline in your life. You just can't get past the hump. Maybe it's your kids are just drifting and you're struggling on how to connect with them. Or maybe it's like we talked about last week. Maybe it's the burden that God gave you and you just don't know how to proceed. We all face different problems in life, good problems and bad problems. Right now in this season of my life, my problems come from my house. Mostly from my house, and it is a fixer-upper home that we bought October of 23. It's a 1971 brick home, and Pastor Greg and I, we spent every day for 6 months straight fixing up this house. I did not move into that house for 6 months. We moved in 2 days before Jace was born. So talk about Candace who wants to nest, and she cannot nest. We have a house to fix up. It was a struggle back then, and I'm not quite the handyman myself around the house. I like to think I am sometimes, but I'm not. In fact, Candace probably has a bigger toolbox than I do, to be honest. But I like to sometimes try to attempt a problem on my own. I want to feel like a man, and I'll try to do some things on my own. Sometimes I like to go to Lowe's or Home Depot and just walk around and see something that I need and walk out like I graduated from Home Depot University. But how many times when you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, that's not the first visit you're making that day. No, you go back 2, 3, 4 times in a 24-hour period just to get what you need. But I usually try a few times on my own, but it's just better to get your father-in-law to come help you out, and a lot better. But the tools that I thought I needed to use ended up sometimes not being the ones I needed at all, or I had found out that that's not exactly how you use tools. So this morning, I brought some of my tools with me I want to preach on today. I got my toolbox at home. It's got dust on it, not because I use it. It's because it's without use. It just collects a lot of dust on top of it. But I want to bring this out this morning. Because here's the thing about toolboxes is that we have a toolbox. We can have all the tools, but if you don't know how to use them, you can end up just as lost or damage a situation unintentionally, meaning you can break something that was never broken before. And you can have everything you need sitting in front of you. You can have the resources, the opportunities, advice, and even good intentions this morning, and still feel like nothing is being fixed. And that's how a lot of us live our lives this morning, is we try to handle things on our own at first. See, we overestimate what we know, we underestimate what we're dealing with, and we keep hoping it's just going to be a quick fix. So I thought about my house. It's just going to be a quick fix. It was not. Because the deeper you get into it, the more you realize it's more than just a surface issue. It's more complicated than it looked when you first recognized the problem. And that's where Nehemiah is taking us today in chapter 2, verses 11 through 20. He has only heard about the walls and gates, but now he's arrived and he can see Jerusalem with his own eyes. So today we're going to look at 4 tools that Nehemiah used to fix a problem that we can all use in our lives today. So if you have missed the first 2 weeks of our series, I'll catch you up to speed right now. Nehemiah, he is a cupbearer for the king of Persia. He is about 800 to 1,000 miles away from Jerusalem. His brother comes into town and tells him what's going on. The Jews were exiled at one point. Now they're returning back to Jerusalem, but things are not going well for them right now. In fact, all the walls and the gates have been crumbled. They're burning down right now. And Nehemiah, after hearing the news, has this God-given burden inside of him to do something about it. But what can he do? He's a cupbearer to the king. And so the only things that he could do is he needed to pray. He needed to fast. What to do. And he did this over a 4-month period. And finally the day came when the king looked at him and says, "Why are you so sad? Something must be troubling you." No king would ever act like this before. It was only a supernatural touch upon the king where he began to have his heart warm to things that Nehemiah was concerned about. So basically the king says, "Hey, here's a blank check. Hey, here's unlimited PTO days. Go to Jerusalem. Here's an army. I will send it out with you, and go do what God is telling you to go do." So this journey took about roughly what we know 2 months. We have no information on what happened on the journey. We are just taken to when he arrived there. But before we get into it, we're going to back up into verse 10, because this is an important verse that we'll need to know for later. As verse 10 says, "But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite officially heard of my arrival, they were very displeased that someone had come to help the people of Israel." So who are these 3 guys? We need to understand who they are, because this will come in for a purpose later. Sanballat, he was likely the governor of Samaria at the time. He was the main voice of opposition. And then we got Tobiah. He's an Ammonite official. He's from the region of East Israel, and he often works alongside the others. But here's the complication with him, is that he actually is related to a lot of the Jews through marriage and different family dynamics. So he's somebody that plays the line. That he's friends with Sanballat, but he's also at the same time he's friends with the Jews. So he compromises a lot of the missions. What we'll see. And then there's Geshem. He's an Arabian leader. He brings a broader, more regional opposition, likely representing surrounding nations that didn't want Jerusalem to be strengthened. So these are the 3 people that Nehemiah is up against. So Nehemiah, he arrives to Jerusalem, and he's facing opposition, but he has a problem that he needs to fix. So this morning, what can we learn from Nehemiah? How he fixed the problem. The first point I want to make this morning is that we need to inspect the reality. Inspect the reality. Let's go to verse 11, going through 15. "So I arrived in Jerusalem. 3 days later, I slipped out during the night, taking a few others with me. I had not told anyone about the plans God had put in my heart for Jerusalem. We took no pack animals with us except the donkey I was riding. After dark, I went out through the valley gate and past the jackal's well and over the dung gate to inspect the broken walls and burned gates. Then I went to the fountain gate into the king's pool, but the donkey couldn't get through the rubble. So though it was still dark, I went up the Kidron Valley instead, inspecting the wall before I turned back and entered again at the valley gate." So first thing, we look at verse 11 here, the very first word. "So I arrived in Jerusalem, period, 3 days later, comma." What's important here is that Nehemiah just needed a nap. That's all he needed. Before he got started, he took 3 days to just rest. And then after those 3 days, Nehemiah took time. He got the lay of the land without bringing any concern to the enemy. So he went out at night when everybody was asleep, and he investigated the ruins. He kept information to himself. He did not involve the public just yet, because he didn't want things to get out to what we heard about Tobiah's friends, who he could compromise the mission. He did not rush into action. He took time to inspect, which showed wisdom in his intention to timing. So if you want to fix a problem in life, you don't lead with assumptions. You lead with firsthand experience, because the problem was more than what Nehemiah even assumed it was. Remember, he just heard about it. Now he's on the scene and he's hearing about it. Verse 14 uses these intensifying words to just show how bad the condition was, that it was overwhelming and undeniable. And the first tool I want to preach on this morning is down here. It is a headlamp. I don't know if you've ever used one of these before. I'll put it on right now. Where's the little button on this guy right here? Here he is. There we go. So you all can see. There we go. Take your pictures now. It's actually got some crazy effects on this. Let me show you this. What is this for? What is the purpose? Maybe Robert can tell me later what this is for, but I don't know what the strobe light effect is for unless you want to have a party somewhere. But this is the headlamp. You can't fix what you can't see. That's the point of the headlamp. Light reveals hidden damage, cracks, and details you couldn't see otherwise. There are people today, however, that some people may even live in a dream world. They don't recognize how big problems is because they refuse to look at the details they couldn't see without bringing light to it. And even worse, many of us will even ignore the problem altogether, because it's just easier that way. But as much as you want to ignore the problem, pretend you're Dorothy from Wizard of Oz and click your heels together and pretend it all goes away and you go home, you have to address the facts no matter how bad it is. You have to accept the bad news. See, the first step to fixing the problem is realizing there is one. So what are the things today in your life that you need to inspect and accept today? Maybe it's your marriage, like we said before. Maybe it's those family relationships, those financial burdens. Maybe it's not the discipline is too hard in your life. Maybe it's your lack of intentionality. Maybe it's your kids are drifting away and you're wondering what's going on, but maybe you're absent. Maybe you're letting Instagram and TikTok disciple them more than you. Maybe you've become more of a friend than a parent to those kids. But things you won't accept until it's brought to light. Whatever you've been trying to hide or suppress will eventually come out. Luke 8:17 says, "For all that is secret will eventually be brought into the open, and everything that is concealed will be brought to light and made known to all." So when we choose to accept and inspect a problem, what do we do next? And Nehemiah had the ability to look at the potential more than the problem. He had God-given vision and trust that God can restore what was broken. The burden he carried was private and just now about to go public. See, vision often develops in private before it's shared public. But can I ask you this morning, what is the vision for your problem? What is the vision for your marriage? What's the vision for your family or finances? Proverbs 29:18 says, "Without vision, the people will perish." Don't be the reason your marriage perished. Don't be the reason the dream perished. Don't be the reason the relationship perished. Don't be the reason that you perished. Ask God, what is the vision for this situation? So what do you want to see for your marriage? What do you want to see for your family? What do you want to see for your life? Have you ever used the tool of the flashlight to inspect what the problems are? Because you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect. Point number 2 this morning is you got to invite the people. Not everybody, but you got to invite some people. Nehemiah 2:16-18 says this, "The city officials did not know I had been out there or what I was doing, for I had not yet said anything to anyone about my plans. I had not yet spoken to the Jewish leaders, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or anyone else in the administration. But now I said to them, you know very well what trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. Let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and end this disgrace." Then I told them about how gracious the hand of God has been on me, and about my conversation with the king. They replied at once, "Yes, let's rebuild the wall." So they began the good work. Nehemiah identified with the people and their needs. See, this is much bigger than walls. This is a disgrace. This is about God's people. And rebuilding meant restoring the identity of God's people. The problem was defined before a solution was given in verse 17. Nehemiah used words like we and us and not you and them, as he himself identified as we are all part of the solution together. Nehemiah recognized that he cannot solve this problem on his own. He needed to invite everybody in. And Nehemiah, he structured his speech in such a way to recruit help for the people. He introduced himself and the problem, and then he challenged them, and then he closed with a testimony, because he realized that testimony builds faith in others, as it says in Revelation 12:11, and they have defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and of their testimony. Because then despair turned into hope. Because it was strategic. And because of that, the people, they did not remind Nehemiah that we've tried this before, and they tore it down anyway. What would be different this time? They didn't use that as an excuse. They didn't say, they did not contend with the way things are. They didn't say, Nehemiah, just don't rock the boat. It's okay, we've been fine for this long. But because of Nehemiah's passion and experience with the Lord, it moved these people to try again and accept the challenge immediately. Because vision becomes powerful when people hear the vision and see and hear about God's hand in it. The point is that you need people to help fix problems. The problems you are facing are not meant to be done alone. People are moved when they hear about vision for the solution and what God wants to do. And so my next tool this morning I want to use is not necessarily a tool, but it's helpful if you got some tools that need power. You need more than just one outlet. So I have brought a extension, a power strip this morning, because maybe you have some power tools and you need more than one outlet. One outlet here becomes many. But here's the key. It doesn't work if everything stays unplugged. No. It gives room for everything to be plugged, but the importance, if you want to use the tool, it still has to be plugged, and then they can all work together. Nehemiah had something powerful. He had a burden from God. He had a clear vision, and he had a testimony of God's hand. But he understands something crucial, though, that this isn't meant to run through one person. So he plugs people into the power strip. He plugs in by sharing the problem and sharing the vision and sharing what God has done and inviting them into action. Because a power strip doesn't create energy, it distributes access to it. And so that's what Nehemiah is doing. God is the source. Nehemiah is not the source. The people are not the source. But together, they are connected to what God is doing. Nehemiah 2:17 through 18 shares this, that Nehemiah names the problem. He says, hey, we're in trouble. He invites participation. He says, let us rebuild. He testifies to God's hand. And the people, they respond immediately. Why? Because they're no longer spectators anymore. They're connected. You don't generate the power. You connect people to what God is already doing. And when people connect, momentum multiplies. So the question isn't just, do you have vision? Yes, you need to have vision, but the question isn't just that. It's, have you created space for others to get connected to what God is doing through you and what he wants to do in you? Are you inviting people that have giftings of maybe wisdom and knowledge? Get people around you that are strong in your weakness. How can people in your life catch on to the vision, what God gave you, and know how they can help? Point number 3 this morning is to expect the opposition. Expect the opposition. Nehemiah 2:19. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, the Arab, heard of our plan, they scoffed contemptuously. What are you doing? Are you rebelling against the king? They asked. How these questions were asked were not to seek information, but they were already trying to accuse. As they worded it, are you rebelling? They were here to ridicule them. Why do people ridicule? Have you ever been ridiculed before? Why people ridicule is because they are the weapon. They have the weapon of those who have no other. All they can do is ridicule. There will be people in your life that don't celebrate the progress you take. In fact, it is to be expected that opposition will come as soon as progress begins. We've all faced ridicule at one point in our life. I say one of the hardest transitions in my life is becoming a parent. Not because now we also have a toddler now to take care of, somebody to really watch over, but because many people have their own opinions on how you should parent. And if you don't do it one way, then you're wrong. I mean, go to any Facebook or Instagram post and go to the comment section, and it's a bloodbath there. And so in other ways of life, the enemy doesn't want you to win. He doesn't want you to celebrate progress. When you're moving toward what God has called you to do, you need to know the enemy will try to stop that. I look at Job in the Old Testament, that he was a blameless and he was a righteous man, but he is still encountered opposition from the enemy. The enemy took everything from him. And the enemy he'll try to remind you that it's easier just to retreat. I look at the Israelites as they went into the wilderness, and they were finally, after 400 years, freed from slavery and bondage, but they just were hungry, and they didn't really know who to trust and where to go. And so they're like, it would just be easier if we went back to Egypt, because at least we can eat something there. How terrible. That is why this morning you need, here it is, the hammer. I'm excited about the hammer. This is not for beating people with. That's not where I'm going this morning. The hammer represents not attacking. The hammer represents not attacking opposition, but staying committed to the work even when resistance shows up. And what we will see next in Nehemiah doesn't pick a fight; he keeps building. And so we'll visit that verse in just a second. The hammer reminds us we don't stop building just because it's uncomfortable. Opposition doesn't mean to quit, it means to keep building. But Nehemiah, he stayed focused on the work. He didn't stay focused on the noise, he stayed focused on the work because he expected the opposition. How do we know that? Because of what he says next. See, in sports terms, in football and basketball, what makes a really good defense is expecting what the offense is going to do. If you can expect what the offense is going to do, you'll know how to defend them. Because you got to learn how to read the play so you know what to defend. Here's the thing. You and I, all this morning, we know the enemy's plan. It's to steal, kill, and destroy. So by expecting what the enemy will do, you will not be shaken, you will not tuck your tail between your legs, and you will not be moved because you expected it. Believers walk around all the time terrified, but newsflash, we've already won. Christ reigns, we reign with him. And because of that, we can hand over all of our problems to the master carpenter who has the steps to fix our problems. But it comes by inspection. You can hand over what you don't know what is wrong. You can't hand over what you don't know is wrong. You got to invite people. You can't go at it alone. God designed to work together. And you got to expect opposition. Don't be caught off guard when you start making progress. And lastly, Ben, you can start making your way back up here. Point number 4 is you got to draw the line. You got to draw the line. Nehemiah drew the boundary lines before the opposition even came. Listen to his rebuttal here in verse 20. It says, I replied, the God of heaven will help us succeed. We, his servants, will start rebuilding this wall, but you have no share, legal right, or historic claim in Jerusalem. See, Nehemiah did not debate with these three. Why? Because rebuilding the wall was God's work, because Jews are God's servants, and then frankly, those three have no matter in the business. Nehemiah, he responded with confidence. He wasn't defensive. He responded with declaration, not with conditional or hesitant statements. Sometimes in life, you just have to draw a line and stand on one side and defend it. That's right. And so my last tool I want to talk about this morning is the level and the pencil. This is important when you are hanging a mirror or a picture frame or something, because without it, you're going to have a really crooked picture frame. And so you take a level and a pencil, you put the markings where you want it to go. The frame needs to go where you drew the marking. It's not optional for it to go to the left or to the right. It has to go at the marking. See, Nehemiah drew the line before the opposition showed up. He has a triple negative here. It says, but you have no share, legal right, or historic claim in Jerusalem. Triple negative. What are you negotiating that God clearly drew a line about? God did not ask you to negotiate with the enemy. He said, speak my truth. So maybe this morning you need to speak that God is the one who began the work. Philippians 1:6, and I am certain that God who began the good work within you will continue his work. Maybe you need to speak this morning, God is for me, who can be against me? That comes from Romans 8:31. If God is for us, who can be against us? Maybe you need to speak this morning, no weapon formed against me will prosper. Maybe you need to quote Isaiah 54:17, and no weapon turned against me will prosper. Maybe you need to quote this and say this morning, I am not building alone, that God is with me. Joshua 1:9, the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And lastly, maybe you say, the work started, it will be finished. That comes from Psalm 138:8, the Lord will perfect which concerns me. When the opposition speaks, Nehemiah answers with what God already said. He didn't have to craft something. He just went back to what God already said. What do you need to go back to what God already said over your marriage and over your family and over your kids? He says, if you do what I say, I will prosper you more than what you already know, because I am the head and not the tail. I'm above and not beneath. But now you have to make the decision. Will you be the victor or the victim? God doesn't want you to play victim mentality this morning. He asked for you to walk in what Christ already died for. Victory over enemies, victory over the plans for you, your family, your calling, your purpose, your destiny, because it's not anything that we did. It's because what Christ already did for us when he went to the cross to die for you and me, that you and I can share in victory with him. So I'm not sure where you're at today. Maybe you need to inspect the reality. You gotta see the reality. Don't avoid it. Don't assume it. Don't ignore it. Bring it to the light so you can address what's actually broken in life. Maybe you need to invite some people into the problem. You weren't meant to fix it alone. You gotta bring people into what God is calling you to rebuild with clarity and faith. Maybe you gotta expect opposition. Anticipate it. Progress always draws resistance, so don't be surprised when pushback comes, but you can be prepared for it. And lastly, maybe you're in a season right now where you just need to draw the line, set the boundary. Decide ahead of time what you will and won't compromise, and stand firm on what God has already spoken. Go ahead and stand with me this morning. I mentioned at the very beginning of the message that we moved into a very old home, and we've been living there for a couple years now. There's a lot of issues with this house. I have before pictures if any of you guys are interested. I mean, the flooring had to come up. There's 4 different types of flooring in this house. There was plumbing issues that showed up. There was openings in my attics where cats got into and treated all my insulation like scratching posts. I have no insulation in my attic. I have electrical that didn't make sense. I had a shed in a garage packed with somebody's old past. I had trees that had to come down. I had bathrooms that had to be completely gutted. And then right before we moved in, we were moving everything in. Pastor Greg, Pastor Ben probably realized this, and they probably heard the real feminine side of me come out at this moment. I was taking paint cans into my garage, and a snake came out under my refrigerator, and I dropped everything. I screamed. I took off. I don't know what I would have done if they were not there at that time. I wasn't going to protect Candace. I was just more concerned about myself. But I thought of that moment when I saw it. I hate snakes. That's one of my greatest fears. I don't do snakes. I'm like Indiana Jones. At this moment, I thought I was going to walk away from all of it. I was almost certain of that. It was 6 months of agony. Maybe this was a sign to get my attention that it was finally time to move on. But now I know the snake was just the enemy showing up in opposition. And I remember people saying, like, man, this is more work than you thought it was. Maybe it's time just to sell it and start over. And I get it. From the outside, that sounds like wisdom. But in the middle of all that, something deeper was happening. Because it was never just about a house. And I want to say that clearly. I believe that God, who spoke to us and said, keep going. Not because it was easy. Not because it made sense, not because it was simple, but because he was writing something bigger than what I could see in the moment. See, the house is still today not finished. I have lots of work to do, so all of you are welcome to come over after service. We got projects. But there are still things that we're working on, though. There are still layers we're uncovering, but God is using all of it. He is using it in us. He's using it for our family. He's shaping something in us that we would never have learned, and everything has been perfect from the beginning. And that's what Nehemiah shows us, is because Nehemiah didn't walk into a finished wall, he walked into ruins. And in the middle of the rubble, God was not rebuilding a city, he was building a people. So maybe today your life feels like that. Maybe it's layers, maybe it's pressure, maybe it's things you didn't expect. The voices are telling you to walk away and start over. But what if God is doing more than fixing what's around you? What if he's forming something in you while you're still in it? So here's what I want to leave you today. We're still building, yes, it's not finished yet. But I can tell you with confidence that God is in it. And what he starts in the middle of a mess, he is faithful to finish. Former pastor and former president of Wheaton College, Dr. Raymond Edmond, said this. He says, it is always too soon to quit. Always too soon to quit. See, anyone can go through life as a destroyer. It's fun. I love a good sledgehammer. But God wants us today to be builders that fix problems so he can receive all of the glory. Thank you. Can you give him a praise offering this morning if you believe that?